All right. Hello, everyone. I'm here at a local park. Well, local to wherever I'm at. I was working Spark Delivery, which is like Walmart's delivery app, and decided to take a break because I want to make another one of these imperfect pondering videos and just talk about something that I feel quite strongly about and have a lot of thoughts about. And I want to just sort of use my voice, share my thoughts, my experiences, my feelings, and see if anyone can relate or has any other perspectives to offer. Maybe we can get a discussion going. But yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, my lips are super chapped today. Hopefully I don't start bleeding out on you guys, but let's dive in. So I want to talk about work, which is, I guess, a really big topic. But I guess more specifically, I want to talk about like work in the United States of America, in the American context, as I am born and raised American, though my parents are from Mexico. But yeah, I guess just sort of, I'll kind of dive into my experiences with work and I guess how I feel about work these days and how work is kind of dubious. Meaning like, I guess in layman terms, work culture is kind of cooked. It's no bueno out here. But I mean, I'll dive in and explain a lot more what I mean. But I guess to start, I mean, for me, I started working, I'm 25 years old at the moment, almost 26 in a few months, but I started working, I think around, I guess officially like age 18. I got like a job at my college, UC Berkeley. Oh, you know what? I'll mention this. So I'm a graduate of UC Berkeley, which is supposedly the top public university in the world. And now I am probably earning below the poverty line and making very, very little money. Partially by choice, but I'll explain that later. And so, yeah, I mean, I had, honestly, like, I feel like, I mean, I've had a handful of jobs. First I worked with like I was like a student assistant for some organization that did like lectures for old people, I guess, like educational lectures for fun for retired folks. That was my first gig. It was all right. The only real job that I loved was when I was a community service officer, which is like basically I worked in a program, I guess, below the police department at my university, UC Berkeley. And my job mainly, I guess, was to walk people home. We had like a night safety escort service. So I walked people home, met a lot of really cool people, worked a lot through my social anxiety, talked to a whole lot of people. And it was really cool. It was a really well-rounded job. I really enjoyed it. I got to talk to people, I got to socialize. People were very appreciative, and I felt like a sense of fulfillment and purpose. And a lot of exercise, there was a lot of walking. It was also a job where, I guess, for the most part, I mean, I guess humans have their biases, but merit mattered in a way, because like we had like ranks and you could like ascend based on like merit. And you know, like I said, we have our biases. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with how connected we are and how well we get along with people and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, like if you worked hard, like I think most people there would agree that you could kind of work your way up and you felt like a sense of accomplishment. And apart from that, just a sort of sense of belonging. I got along really well with all my coworkers. It was a really fun job. But ever since then, I've never quite had anything really, I guess, similar, or something that really fulfilled me or that I really enjoyed. After college, I did that for most of my years in college. Afterwards, I went to teach English in China, which is probably the second best job I had. I think I really loved that because of the environment I was in, like living in a foreign country, more so than like the work itself. But the work itself was pretty decent, fairly enjoyable. I think a lot of it was unenjoyable, but that was more so like internal pressures and anxieties, and just, I guess, in retrospect, realizing that I wasn't very communicative and I had a lot of fears that I wasn't really aware of. That kind of made it dreadful in some ways. But that was cool. And then after that, I did remote reading tutoring as I kind of traveled around, lived in Mexico, and stuff like that for a while. But now, this past year, I have not, since January of last year, yeah, I guess a year, almost exactly probably, I haven't really held a quote-unquote like real job. I've done only gig work. So when I wasn't traveling or abroad in China, or just traveling like Southeast Asia, I was in like Thailand, Malaysia, more time in Mexico as well. But when I wasn't traveling or living abroad, I was here and I was working gig work. So Uber Eats was my go-to months ago. This latter half of the year, or I guess the last like 4 months, I've been doing Spark delivery driving, basically earning near minimum wage. As a bachelor holder, I have a bachelor's in global studies, and yeah, and I guess I did have one job that paid decent when I came back semi-recently. I worked at like a training center, or like an after-school tutoring program. It was like Chinese run, like Chinese Americans, and that was dreadful. That was horrible. I only lasted a week or two, and oh my gosh. But I guess this is all to say, I feel like, in my experience, I feel like when it came to a lot of jobs or applying for jobs, I think a lot of people have kind of been talking about this and becoming more aware and sharing their experiences. But there's, I think, a growing number of people who are looking for work and just can't find anything. For a time, I was applying to a lot of things. I did dozens of applications, and I did find some, but not even domestically here in the US. I was like applying for jobs as like teachers in China and stuff, which I could get if I wanted to. Those options would probably be there. But I feel like in the US, nothing really called to me and nothing excited me. I feel like I was so burnt out just applying so much and working on resumes and going through interviews, or just hearing back nothing. And I feel like it got really frustrating and just like soul sucking, And I think the worst part was like, I don't know if people can relate to this, but I feel like a lot of jobs in general in the US are soul sucking. Like we don't really feel a lot of meaning or fulfillment. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I don't, in a way, I've decided not to try super hard to work. I guess there's a lot that goes into that. I really want to, I guess, live life on my terms, pursue my dreams, do things that are meaningful and fulfilling, sort of like this, that help me grow as a person and these are all things I'm still, I guess, figuring out and working on. But I feel like, in general, I feel like in the US, a lot of people are very unhappy, very stressed. I feel like we're so tied up and obligated to, like, typically it's our job, that, like, there's no time or, like, capacity. I feel like that's an important part that maybe isn't talked about as much, but I feel like if you're working, like, a full-time job or even more here in the US, like, you don't really have, like, the energy or capacity to, like, sometimes people barely have the time and energy to focus on their own well-being. And, I feel like that leads to a lot of things. A lot less engagement, a lot less capacity to, like, care about other people and other things and politics and broader issues and what's going on elsewhere. All these sorts of things. I'll try not to sidetrack too much, but I feel like work in general is, I don't know, it's weird because I've spent a lot of time abroad. I've spent a lot of time in China, particularly, and it's not just the US. I guess maybe it's capitalism, but it's something I see everywhere I've been. Where people, it's even worse in China. They have a thing called 996 work culture, where you basically work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And when I hear or see things like that, I think that people will probably be like, oh, like, then the US has it amazing. 9 to 5 is nothing compared to that. And I guess that's where it's kind of this interesting phenomenon where, like, I feel like everything is relative. Like, if you come from a country where you're expected to work, like, all day every day, it's very, this in comparison is like nothing. It's very probably relaxing or a lot less stressful. You feel a lot more at ease. And it's interesting because I was thinking about this a lot with the recent, I guess like a couple weeks ago by now, but the whole incident about the H1B1. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there was a whole thing where, like, Elon Musk and, like, I forget the other guy's name, but they were talking about work and, like, H1B1 visas, which are essentially, I guess, higher skilled workers that come from abroad. So, for example, like, if there are, I don't know, I guess a lot of them come from India or China. They're, like, software developers, was the focal point of that whole debate on Twitter or X or whatever. But I feel like, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked a bit from the background noise. But I feel like it kind of, I guess, made me kind of put a bunch of puzzle pieces together, because, like, I think in the US, I think online particularly, I think is different, because online people are more willing to say whatever they truly think, or just be less considerate, or maybe they're angry or whatever, or resentful, bitter people, who knows. I think in the US, as an immigrant, I feel like there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment. I feel like most people, I think immigrants are tolerated. I don't really feel that, in my experience, in my opinion, I don't feel that immigrants are really, like, embraced or accepted. And I think a lot of times we demonize people who are, like, I don't know, anti-immigrant, like, saying, like, oh, like, we want jobs for ourselves, like, we're struggling, blah, blah, blah. I think in general, online, on Twitter, there's a lot of rage bait, and, the most extreme voices are the loudest, so there isn't as much room for nuance and gray area. But, I feel like something just kind of snapped, and I realized, like, man, like here, validly, people are concerned about their own well-being, their own ability to work and to make money and this and that. And I think there's a lot of people who are really stressed, really struggling, really hopeless, and feeling desperate, and like there's nowhere to turn to, no solution to their problems. I think there's a lot of people with a lot of built up anger and resentment and pain and suffering. And I feel like it kind of all connects. I think it's kind of ironic because, so with that whole H1B1 thing, Elon Musk was like saying, oh, there aren't any like highly skilled, highly motivated like workers, like skilled workers in the US. To which, if you or someone you know is like looking for work currently in like software engineering, for example, you would know that like that is ridiculous. There's so many, I mean, for one, there was like a frick ton of layoffs just in the past couple of years in those sectors. But I mean, I have one friend who's been looking for work in software engineering for a very long time. I have friends looking for work in other sectors that haven't found things for a very long time. And I mean, it's insane, like the amount of work and time and energy you have to put just to like get like an interview, and then those interviews are like 3-4 stages. I mean, it's insane, dude. Which is why, like, for me personally, I've given up on chasing like a well-paying job in that sense. But let me not stray off too far. So Elon Musk was saying we need more immigrant workers, skilled immigrant workers, via the H1B1 visa. And I think Trump eventually agreed with him, and it was this whole uproar around immigration and H1B1 visas. But essentially, what I realized as a teacher in China, I mean, I am teaching these kids English, and it's really strange because as someone that grows up in the US, I feel like I'm a lot more cynical, and I see a lot of what's really dubious and like questionable and just like broken about our system here. And there's so much to it when it comes to like immigration and wanting to move abroad or live somewhere else. There's so many push-pull factors. I guess it's like all human geography type stuff. But essentially, like all these kids in China, I mean, they're born in a country of 1.4 billion, like 4 times the amount of people here. Same with India, extremely competitive, super, super competitive, to the point of, I think most people would feel it's really toxic and just stressful. And I mean, people literally die. People suicide all the time from being just overburdened, overstressed, overly anxious. And it's crazy because like over there, there's so much competition. The amount of time they work is insane compared to here. So just landing a job, just getting here is like gonna be cushy, right? And with the H1B, when your employment is tied to your ability to stay here, you can't stay in the US if you lose your employment. So part of the whole debate was like, these are workers who can be, I guess, exploited or put under a lot of pressure, to which they will, I guess, reluctantly succumb to it because, I mean, they don't want to get kicked out of the country. And there's this whole debate where essentially H1B1 allows people to come in who are more motivated, but part of that is they are grown up in an environment that's so much more competitive, so they have an edge here. And I feel like this is a strange, or maybe not strange, thing about work is like, I recently, man, I don't know if I might have to, this whole video might be about a whole bunch of stuff, but I guess it's all connected anyways. But I recently saw a comment somewhere online that said like, capitalism pins the workers of the world against each other. And I feel like that's exactly what I was kind of thinking of in seeing this all play out. everyone, for the most part in the world, most just common folk, they just want to live an enjoyable life. They want to not be hungry. They want to be comfortable. They want to be happy. I would think most people can agree on this. And they want life to be meaningful, whatever that is for someone particularly, whether they're religious or spiritual or atheistic, whatever, right? And it's strange because, or maybe not strange, maybe it's intended, I don't know. But if you really think about it, the more and more pressure, the more and more conflict, the more and more tension there is between people, workers, whether that's immigrant versus citizen, like, or what have you. I mean, it feels like a divide and conquer type of thing. You know, like, we're all just trying to get by. We're all struggling. These people coming from other countries, they're not evil. I think it's understandable why people have a lot of resentment or anger towards them, and I think it's unwarranted for the most part. But I think it's valid for them to also feel that they want to be able to live life comfortably and have their own well-being prioritized as American citizens. But it's craziness because, I mean, we're all just like grabbing knives and daggers and like at each other's throats. But meanwhile, like, I mean, the richest people are just, I mean, it's insane. The amount of wealth that exists in, I mean, I guess not even just this country, but in a lot of the world. And, you know, I guess maybe I'll talk about this too. I guess I feel like it connects, but talking about like wealth accumulation, I feel like there are people who have so much that it's insane. They have so many physical, material things that don't bring happiness. Fundamentally, they don't bring any more joy or happiness. I mean, it's just hoarding, really, is what I feel like. And I feel like that's one of the things that has me feeling disillusioned and disconnected from trying to work, or even like fundamentally, I feel like a lot of these things are what's valued in American society. You know, working or not what working is, but trying to accumulate wealth, trying to get rich, trying to get a bigger, better car, nice, cool products, PlayStations, cars, big house, more houses, become a renter, become a or not a renter, become a landlord, then become a landlord to even more properties, then you just keep growing your empire, right? And I feel like it begs the question, like, when is enough? I think for the most part, most people, you know, a lot of us are just small fish. You know, your local landlord is just a small fish. Maybe they own one property, maybe a couple properties. But there are people who, I mean, probably own hundreds of thousands of things. And it's just, I feel like fundamentally, I think it's something that's causing so many problems in the world. The drive to accumulate, whether that's money, whether that's physical, I don't know, assets. There's a story I heard once. It was like about like I don't know if it's real, probably not. But it was like a billionaire went to like a village, a fishing village or something in like, I don't know, the Philippines. And he saw this man fishing for fish. And he saw the man fish for one fish, and then he went home. And then he walks up to him and he's like, sir, like, why do you only get two fish? And he's like, oh no, he got two fish, yeah. Why do you only get two fish when you could get three? He was like, oh, well, I got one fish for my family for dinner and one fish for selling at the market. He's like, oh, well, why do that when you can catch like 4 fish or more fish? And so he was like, but why would I do that? The fisherman said, why would I do that? And he was like, oh, so you could buy a second boat and then you could catch even more fish. And he's like, but why would I do that? So that you can buy even more boats and have a whole fleet. But why would you do that? Oh, so you can catch even more fish and then buy a second fleet and then sell that fleet or rent it out to someone else. And then why would you do that? Why would you do that? It just keeps going, right? And essentially the billionaire is just saying like, oh, like just keep expanding. But why? Why is the whole thing? And the whole idea is like, this fisherman is someone who already has what he needs. He already has what he needs to be content and to be grateful and happy with his life. He has his family, he has his ability to care for his family, and he has the ability to sell fish and make a little more money, I guess also to care for his family. And I feel like fundamentally this is something that I see, I feel like it's what is like at the center of US society, this idea of accumulating wealth, accumulating all sorts of things. And I guess when it comes to work is where I feel like for my own life I'm like but why I feel like with work we lose more and more of what's valuable. We lose more and more of our time. We get more stressed, more anxious, more obligations. We lose our own well-being. We have less energy to spend with friends, with family, with things that are meaningful, maybe faith. And yet I feel like that's what's normal. And I'm sure there's a lot of like generational differences, and I think a lot of people my generation and younger are kind of seeing this and growing up in a world where it's very clear that some things are just systematically very wrong and broken. And I can't help but feel like maybe that's how it's meant to be. I feel like when you are so caught up with work, you don't have the time to really care for things, care about what's going on in the world, in your community. And I feel like as I travel more and I observe and I guess like ponder things, analyze things, I feel like I see all these connections where I feel like it's like 1% versus 99%. Everyone, all the workers, most people that you run into in your day-to-day life, they're just trying to live life, try and figure this shit out, because life is very strange. Life is a crazy thing. And I feel like you could kind of criticize and like diminish someone's feelings. Someone might say like, oh, like we're spoiled in the US because we only work 40 weeks. Look at China, they're working 40 hours a week. Look at China, they're working 80 hours a week, which is also crazy. And it's not just China. I haven't really traveled to much of I've only been to Asia and North America, and I guess, and so I guess this is what I've seen, what I've observed in the countries I've been to. Even like Japan, South Korea, very, very high stress, highly competitive societies where work and maybe materialism too. I haven't spent too much time there, so I couldn't speak as much on that, but I do know that there's some of these same problems. A lot of suicide, a lot of this loneliness epidemic. I feel like in a lot of the world we're increasingly more anxious, more stressed, more miserable, more unhealthy. And I think, I don't know, it's always weird because online is very different from in person. sometimes I feel like there's so much change and everyone's waking up, but at the same time, our algorithms cater to ourselves. So I don't know how many people feel the way I do, or think the way I do, or agree with what I do, or I have seen, or have seen the same things. But I don't know. It's just all so much craziness. And I feel like for me, I've reached a point where I've kind of been lowering my baseline of what I need. I don't really feel a need to make a lot of money. I mean, it would certainly be very nice, and I would certainly be less stressed about finances. But it's crazy. I mean, the craziest thing is, like, here in the US, the US dollar is so strong in most parts of the world, where for me it's easier to be here a few months at a time, make some money working like a minimum wage job, like gig work, deliveries, and then trying to spend as much time as I can outside of the US, where my money goes so much further and where I don't have to spend half of my money just existing, you know? I feel like in the US, I mean, rent is, like, for a lot of people, almost half their income, maybe 60%. On average, I think probably like a third. And it's just craziness, man. And so, yeah, I feel like for me, I mean, it's just not, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to lose my time, my well-being, my health, my wellness, working my ass off just to make someone else richer or feel better about themselves. You know, it's not to say like all work is soulless or meaningless. I mean, there's a lot of great work out there. There's a lot of great initiatives and things that truly matter. I guess what I'm against is work. I guess it's a question of what's like the reason, what is the why for companies, or for why something exists. And I feel like the why for a lot of things is shareholder value, shareholders and money, wealth accumulation. And I think that's been very clear with, hopefully, I don't know how many people know of the whole healthcare CEO, Luigi Mangione thing. But I think it's increasingly discussed, and more people are becoming more aware and seeing these connections. But you know, I think there are just some things that don't make sense. I mean, I want to see a world where what's prioritized is well-being, human wellness. You know, a human-centered economy, as Andrew Yang would say. And yeah, you know, it's a scary world. I think it's only getting scarier with AI. I mean, who knows where things can go from here. But I think I touched on everything, or a lot of things. Definitely touched on a lot of things. Don't know if it all made sense. I'm sure I'm missing things. But yeah, I mean, I know it's easier said than done to be like, yeah, fuck work. You know, a lot of us are very stressed, very super tied down, and you know, we have to work to survive. And I'm very blessed to be in a position where I can at least, you know, my parents are alive and well. I can stay with them. I don't have to pay rent when I'm here. And I mean, if I was living by myself and I had to crunch out like 60 hours a week of Spark delivery to pay rent and just exist, I mean, I would be so miserable. I'd be so stressed. It would be horrible. And so, you know, we're definitely very privileged in this country. And I guess you can always compare to some place that's a lot worse. But that doesn't change our experiences. It doesn't change our observations. We, I guess, are products of what we know. We only know what we know. And I think some of these same patterns that I'm seeing, like in the US, I mean, I'm seeing it in other countries, and maybe it's all over the world. maybe it's time for a shift globally, where what we strive for isn't money or status or wealth, but wellness, connection, purpose, fulfillment, health. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? So, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to be the change I want to see. I don't want to play into that system, and I'd rather not make much money at all and at least be able to live a comfortable life where I can prioritize my wellness, prioritize my health, prioritize my time, spending time with friends, family, people I care about, and growing personally, I guess, doing things like this that are meaningful and important to me, and trying to raise awareness or create that discussion at least, right? So yeah, I guess that's about it. I need to get back to work. How about you guys? Oh man. Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks for listening. Drop a comment. Let's talk about things. Let's ponder together. Alright, peace.